everybody. I'm so excited to introduce you to Dr. Monique Frazier. She's a family friend and totally awesome. She is a psychologist and got her PhD from USU in 1998. She did her pre-doctoral internship at the University of Kansas School of Medicine and then worked as the chief psychologist at Logan Regional Hospital into 2000 when she started doing private practice. She's now working at USU in the counseling and psychological services while she continues to do her private practice. I'm so excited for you to hear our interview as we talk about mental health and what we can do to help those around us, what we can do to take care of ourselves. I hope you really enjoy. All right, and perfect. Okay, we're going. Awesome. So I'm here with Dr. Monique Frazier. She's a family friend and a psychologist, and I'm super excited to talk to her about mental health, which is something I'm super passionate about, and I know you are as well.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we can just jump into it. How long have you been practicing psychology or doing private practice?
So I received my PhD in 1998 from USU. So I'm an Aggie.
Oh, Aggie.
And I did my internship at the University of Kansas School of Medicine. And then I took a position at Logan Regional Hospital as their chief psychologist for a couple years, and then shifted into private practice in 2000. And I've had a private practice in Logan since then. And then most recently, I joined counseling and psychological services at USU in 2017.
Awesome. Perfect. So you've been doing a lot to work with this and everything.
Yeah, it's been a full and wonderful career, getting to meet amazing people and help them on their journeys.
Awesome. And so what made you kind of want to get into psychology in the first place? What kind of drove you into that field?
Yeah, I took my first psychology class as a freshman in college and had to volunteer. And I chose to volunteer at a local abuse and rape crisis center. And I was kind of blown out of the water. I grew up on a farm in North Dakota and had a pretty sheltered childhood, and I just didn't even know what people all went through in terms of trauma, and it really touched me, and it felt like very important work. And so I immediately switched my major from international finance to psychology, and have just loved it ever since. I just felt like if I was going to be doing something for 40 hours a week, it felt so meaningful to me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so awesome. That's a cool beginnings.
Yeah, you know how you have no idea sometimes when you first start, and once I volunteered, I knew.
You're like, there it is. That's what I want to do. Perfect. Yep. And so kind of just to define, like, what is mental health for you? Or like, what is kind of like the definition that you would give to it?
Yeah, I'm sure there's an official definition out there somewhere. How I kind of think about it is wellness in terms of managing and processing your thoughts and feelings. Okay. I think mental health is very holistic, and a big part of mental wellness brings in other parts of life, like physical health or spiritual health, connection with others. And so I think it's really, really big. But within psychology, we do a lot to help people learn skills around the healthy management of thoughts and feelings.
Great. Awesome. I love that. What are some of so like in your private practice, what are some of like the mental health struggles that you see the most? Like what kind of experiences or things do you see the most in like your practice?
Yeah, probably the most common are various forms of depression and anxiety, which is quite broad. Particularly anxiety could be social anxiety or generalized anxiety, which are worriers, or post-traumatic stress disorder is an anxiety disorder when people have gone through trauma, or obsessive compulsive disorder.
Interesting.
But we probably most commonly see something in the realm of depression or anxiety.
Okay. Cool, cool. Yeah, I remember reading that I think in the world like anxiety is like one of like the most common. So that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
We're kind of a stressed out species.
Seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
And just like along those lines, do you feel like because of like COVID, have you seen more of those kind of experiences just because of like what we're going through as like a society or as like a world? Do you feel like that's something that has been like what's the word? Like strengthened, not strengthened, but like you've seen it more?
Yeah. Like it's exacerbated
Yeah,
everything.
there's the word.
Um, and uh, both being it's dealing with so much uncertainty. Human beings don't like to deal with uncertainty.
Yeah, I feel
And
that.
there's been so much uncertainty, and that there's just been so much outright loss, loss of life, loss of health. But then other maybe non-traditional kind of losses of maybe your college experience, it's
Mhm.
not what you hoped, or your ability to recreate has been really impacted by COVID, and definitely big loss of social connection.
Oh
And
yeah,
luckily
for
we
sure.
have these other formats, but
Yeah,
it's still not quite the same as in person and touch
yeah,
and some of those things. So yeah, definitely we know that COVID has really
has increased
made
that.
mental health struggle even worse.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Perfect.
yeah,
And some of those like what are like the misconceptions that kind of surround mental health? Like I know there's a lot that goes around everywhere. Like what are some of those misconceptions that kind of we need to rethink?
yeah. One that comes to mind is this idea that only crazy people need help with mental health or have mental health struggles,
Yeah.
um, when really every human being on the planet at some point or at many points will be dealing with mental health struggles. Like,
Yeah.
if life hasn't thrown you in the blender yet, it will.
It's
Like,
coming for
it's
you. Like
coming.
just wait.
And sorry, I know that's a little, but I think it's
It's
good
true.
to expect it and anticipate it,
Yeah.
and then think about what we can do to be best prepared, because life will. That is the nature of our existence, is
Mhm.
that it's really hard sometimes. And so I think that's a misconception, that only some people deal with it, when really we all do, because we spend so much time like presenting to the outside world that everything's wonderful, like on
Yeah.
social media and that. And it's like,
Exactly.
oh,
Yeah.
I guess everyone else seems to be doing pretty awesome and having these
Yeah.
wonderful lives.
Why am
And
I not?
yeah, and that can be really hard. And life's both. Life is awesome, and there are lots of wonderful moments and lots of joy, but I feel like sometimes we kind of hide that other part. I think
Absolutely.
another like big problem misconception is the idea that it's weak to get help, or that you can't get help until it's really bad. And I
Yeah.
always kind of think of that compared to physical health. Um,
Yes.
that like, if you started having pain in your lower right quadrant, and went into the doctor to get, your appendix looked at, I don't think anyone would be like, "God, that was weak. Why did you go to the doctor when you were hurting?" And people would be like,
You
"Smart,
should have waited
you
until it
know."
exploded or something. Like,
Exactly. They'd
yeah.
be like, "Smart, go in, get it checked out, talk to someone." But with
Yeah.
mental health, I think there's this feeling of like, oh, I'm not super horrible bad. It's weak to go in. I should just be stronger. When really it's very smart and very strong to reach out for help. And then I think if we consider from a preventative lens, same
Mhm.
thing with physical health. No one criticizes people for like trying to have a good diet and exercise
Yeah.
to give ourselves the best preventative physical health we can. But sometimes I
Absolutely.
think people feel shy um, about taking similar preventative measures with their mental health.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are a
I love
couple.
that. I love that. And speaking about like diet and exercise, um, kind of, I know that that's some of the ways that we can help our mental health. What are some of those ways, like that we can positively influence our mental health so that we can kind of like feel like we can regain control? Because I know, like for me as a person, if I feel like I'm out of control, like that's the worst. I hate it.
Yeah, yeah.
So what are those ways that we can feel like we're more in control of our mental health or positively influence it?
Yeah, I think learning skills, there are a ton of specific skills to having good mental health, and they take practice like anything else. So for example, if we think of the anxiety realm for a moment, learning relaxation skills,
Mm,
because we tend to have these go 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 rush lives, and we throw our bodies and minds into a constant state of fight or flight. And that's really
yeah.
unhealthy. It's really physically unhealthy, and it's really mentally
Yeah.
unhealthy. So, like learning belly breathing, progressive muscle relaxation,
Mm,
um, visualization, meditation, those are all, it's recommended that you put your body into a state of deep relaxation for 20 to 30 minutes a day. And if you do that every day for a month, you will notice differences. And there will be physiological differences in your blood pressure, your pulse, your physical symptoms, how often you get headaches, how tense and achy are your muscles. Like the data on that is so strong. If we had a pill that had those same results, everyone would be on it. But
yeah.
no one wants to take 20 minutes a day to do something that's actually really enjoyable and
Yeah.
healthy. So there's a lot. And then cognitively, since we talked about that, there are a lot of great skills you can learn for swapping out healthy thoughts for unhealthy thoughts. Because a
Mhm.
lot of times when we feel depressed or anxious, our thoughts are contributing, causing, or worsening it.
Yeah.
Um, and so there are a lot of good cognitive skills that can help us. Yeah, and then just kind of more lifestyle things, like along with the healthy diet and exercise,
Mhm.
having really good friends who treat us really well and being a good friend to others, that connecting piece,
I like that.
um, healthy spirituality so that you're connected to something larger than yourself.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and and that can look like, whether that's through religious participation, service, the outdoors. Now that can
Mhm.
look like a lot of different things.
I
So
love
those are
that.
a couple ideas. That is a long, long list, but
Oh,
that's a
I bet.
couple.
Yeah. There's so much you can do. I love that though.
Yeah,
Those are some really good like kind of things to take into consideration because I mean, yeah, there's a lot of craziness out there. And like what we were talking about before, like if life hasn't put you through some craziness yet, like it's going to. I read recently that about 50% of Americans experience some form of mental illness at some point in their life. So it's not like a huge thing that lasts forever, but like at some point in their life they go through like a mental crisis kind of a thing. What
yeah.
are some of those like big moments in life, or what are some of the things that could maybe cause um sort of a mental illness or a mental crisis kind of a thing?
Yeah. So we kind of think about points of vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of think about that biologically and environmentally.
Okay.
So biologically, we may be vulnerable if our genetics are such that a lot of mental health issues run in our family,
Yeah.
which is random, right? And something you
Yeah, it
can't
just kind of
control, but
depends.
it
Yeah.
could put you at more risk.
Mhm.
Another biological thing is our own chemical situation. And so things like hormones can impact that. So,
Yeah.
one stage of life that we tend to see this jump in diagnoses of major mental health illness is late teens and early 20s. And
Makes
there's a
sense.
lot going on
Yeah.
hormonally, right?
Oh yeah.
Another time we do is in the menopausal years for women. A
I bet.
lot's going
Yeah.
on hormonally, and it
That
leaves us
makes sense.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
Other biological conditions like illness.
Mm-hmm.
might leave us vulnerable. Our guts, 90% of our serotonin is produced in our guts. And if
Really?
so,
I didn't
yeah,
know that. That's
yeah,
crazy.
you tend to think, and
You're
it
like,
is
it's all in the
produced,
brain.
yeah, and it is produced in your brain, but most of it is in your gut. And so
Interesting.
anything that messes with your gut health can mess with your mood, because serotonin has some impact, some significant
That's
impact on
wild. I
mood.
didn't know that.
So yeah, so there are like biological vulnerable spots.
Yeah.
And then if we think of environmental vulnerable spots,
Yeah.
loss is huge. So
Absolutely.
um, if you lose a loved one, trauma is huge. If you endure abuse, or let's say you're in a combat setting and have to
Yeah.
see terrible things.
Definitely.
Other kind of losses like divorce or job loss or breakup with a boyfriend or girlfriend. So anything that happens in your world that raises your stress level leaves
Mm-hmm.
you more vulnerable. And there,
Yeah.
COVID you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't
Yeah, we're
believe.
all, and we see that like the whole world is more vulnerable right now.
Yeah. That just blows my mind because of like the ginormous proportions to like what it's gonna go to. It just blows my mind.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And to kind of go along with that, just like it's on people's lips, like everybody's talking about mental health, and I feel like especially like at least in my lifetime, I feel like in the last like 10 to 12 years or so, like mental health has really become sort of a buzzword. Like
yeah,
people talk about it more, people are being more open about it, and kind of destigmatizing it, so kind of like debunking that it's weak and that it's not like you're not strong if you go and get help. Like how do you feel like we can continue to work to destigmatizing it, or like how well are we doing at doing that, and like what more can we do? So
yeah. I feel like it's really coming along,
yeah, it really
and
has.
and your generation, like, big cheer for today's youth. You guys just
Yay.
really. Uh, I love today's youth because it feels like you're so much more open and willing to talk, and it is, I think of late a buzzword that's kind of the silver lining of COVID
Yeah.
is everyone is in this same boat to some extent, even though it
Yeah.
plays out differently for different
Yeah.
people and in different countries. But
Absolutely.
just that willingness to have the conversations and to say, life is really hard right now, or um, and go get help, and let's show up for one another
Yeah.
as we go through the harder things in life. And so I think there's a lot the media is doing too. I saw a
Yeah.
really
Sure.
cool ad on a bus in Logan just the other day where there was a picture of a few people like in a park chatting or something, and it
Uh-huh.
said, "This is what suicide prevention looks like."
Wow.
And yeah, and so just even, I don't know how many years ago it would have been that we would have never seen the word suicide on a bus.
Yeah.
Right. So just
Seriously.
acknowledging, and I think goes a really long way for reducing stigma. And
Like
things like this,
yeah.
Hannah, that you're doing.
Yay.
Yeah,
Talking
like,
about it. It's good.
yeah, right? Just like,
Yeah.
yeah, talking about it's big.
Oh yeah, I know that I've seen it in like my own family, and you know my family, but like just talking about it and like being able to communicate with each other, like things kind of suck right now and like this is hard, and then being able to have like that communication with people to kind of realize that you're not alone, like
Yeah,
it's okay. And
yeah,
then yeah, I think it's so
yeah.
big. Oh,
I
I love
also
that.
like that that I think there's more of a partnership forming between traditional medicine and psychology.
Mm,
Like we're seeing more of that in hospitals or in clinics. There will
yeah.
be psychologists or social workers on staff, and so it just facilitates getting them the help they need. Or you even see now at like urgent care centers, there
Yeah.
is someone there for mental health. And so just increasing that access.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, it's great. And then just to kind of like to transition, like what, so we talked about why it's a buzzword, kind of what's going on. What can we do to help those around us? What are the best things that we can do to help those around us
Mm-hmm.
if they're struggling, if they're having
Yeah.
that hard time? Like, what are some of those things that we can do?
I think number one is have the conversation, have the
Yeah.
difficult conversation, and the formula that I like for having that conversation is to start out by saying, "Hey, I've noticed X," and it might be like,
Mhm.
"You haven't been coming out with us like usual," or "You seem down," or "You said this or this the other day, and I'm concerned. How are you?"
Yeah.
And you just invite, I care about you and I wanted to check in,
Yeah.
because you want to create the safest possible emotional environment for the person to feel comfortable to share. And just the phrase I always think of is be a curious listener.
I
Be
like
like,
that.
what? So if they say like, "Oh, life kind of sucks lately,"
Yeah.
that instead of, sometimes our tendency when someone that we love is hurting is like to jump in and make it all better.
And just fix it.
I have that in me and I know better, but like
Same.
I want to just be like, you know what, it's going to be fine, or just do these 7 things and everything will be better. And that's not where you go first anyway. First
Yeah.
is like, "Oh, well, what's been going on? Tell me about it."
Hmm.
And just listen, like really listen, and offer validation where it's like, "Wow, that sounds really hard." Um,
Yeah.
and then you might help the person come up with some ideas after you listen.
Mm.
So it might be like, um, "Have you thought of anything that you might try that could be helpful?" Another thing I think we can do, and of course it depends on the severity of what the person's
Yeah.
dealing with and the
Like what's
duration and all
happening.
of
Yeah.
that. Yeah. But another thing that I think is really important is to offer to connect them with professional help. If that,
Okay.
so to say, like, "Hey, have you thought about talking to anyone? I'd be happy to get on the phone with you and call to make an appointment, or to Google therapists, or to help you find someone who could give you some really good support. And I want to be here for you as your friend. Then I also want you to have the level of help that you need. And it sounds like you're really
Yeah.
hurting right now."
Yeah.
So I think as friends too, we have to be careful that we don't step in and play therapist and get in, and get overwhelmed. And now
Right.
we have 2 people struggling, but that we offer
Yeah.
support at the friend level and then help connect the person with professional help if they're willing to and if that's
Into that
called for.
option. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. That's great. I think that's so important because I agree. I know so many people who are like, they hear something happening, it's crazy, it's just like, okay, we're gonna do this, 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 and this, and it's gonna be all better. But I love
Yeah.
listening first, like taking the time to understand. I think that's so great. I love that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then just kind of like finally, I try to help people kind of find resources to learn more about
Yeah.
certain topics. And so what are the best places or best things we can do to educate ourselves more on mental health so that we can be that person that they can go to so we can, kind of help, but also like for ourselves, like if
Yeah.
we don't recognize it, like what can we do to educate ourselves more or
Yeah.
where?
Yeah. Um, I mean, the internet has so many great resources. And so I really think it is a positive thing to go on and Google YouTube videos for dealing with anxiety.
Mm.
You always want to check your sources because there's quite a range of quality.
Oh
I
yeah,
like TED
definitely.
Talks. just because, yeah, because I guess I trust the reliability of what's produced on TED Talks. But I also think self-exploration is a good thing. There are a lot of wonderful self-help books with mental health that I kind of favor workbooks. So if you're someone who likes to read and write, I like a workbook format.
I like that.
Harbinger is a publisher that I find myself going back to over and over, and I'm not employed by them or anything.
You're like, I just like them, they're great.
I just think they have a lot of great workbooks on mental health. And then also like doing a round of therapy, do a course of individual therapy, because then you can explore with a professional things that are just really specific to you. I've had so many people over the years who they might start their therapy from a place of kind of, I guess I'd call it more medical necessity. Like, let's say they're having panic attacks and it's really interfering.
Like they need it. Yeah.
Yeah, because their functioning is being interfered with. And then we get those squared away. But they realize, like, it's so helpful, and they're oftentimes surprised. It's so helpful to like have this 1 hour a week that's just all, for me to like check in with myself. And I'm like, it's great stuff, right? Just like, daily exercise and different things, again, that we do all the time for our physical health, but we think we don't have time to make that space for our mental health. So whether that's with a therapist or dedicating time to work out of a self-help book, or dedicating time to get online and look at stuff, I think like just make the space for it. I think that's oftentimes the harder thing than that people actually can't find materials, because now, I mean, there are so many materials out there and so many websites, but it's more like slowing down enough, prioritizing enough to make space to do it. Yeah.
Perfect. I love that. Just take some time, I saw like self-help when like self-care is like mental health, like taking care of yourself is the best way to take care of your mental health, just because sometimes you need to step back, sometimes you just need to remove yourself from the situation and take that time for yourself. So
I would say another kind of thought along those lines, a way that people often end up like trying to cope, but it's maladaptive, are a variety of different avoidance behaviors. So it's like you feel the feeling, whether it's sad or stressed or upset or whatever the feeling, and it doesn't feel good. It's like, I don't want to feel this. And so we want to avoid that. And we might reach for a substance, or we might reach for an addiction, online shopping, or sexual addictions, or pick your poison, eating disorder, and we avoid. And Brene Brown, I think, says it very well, that the people that are on the planet today, particularly in our country, were the most overweight, in debt, addicted people that have ever been on the planet. And I really think all that comes down to not learning how to deal with negative feelings. So we stuff them down, avoid by either like being super busy, so it can look healthy, like it can look like I'm just uber productive, or with addiction kind of stuff, which doesn't look healthy. But and then we don't really address those feelings, and we don't kind of learn how to love ourselves through. And so I think any tools that help you learn skills and processes for those are really important.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much. This was perfect. Like, I love the information that you gave. I feel like it's super helpful. things to know, kind of to check in with ourselves and like be aware of those things that can maybe trigger us. And like what we can do to be friends and to help people and to connect and make sure that everyone around us and ourselves are doing okay. So thank you.
Yeah.
That was perfect. Thank you so much for the information and thanks for letting me interview you and to talk more.
Yeah. Well, thank you for valuing mental health and for doing your cool program.
Yay!
I
So
wish
much
you
fun.
all the best. Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect.